How's it going, Starseekers? My name's Gotcake, and in this review we're going to be taking a look at Robozarro, a physics-based platformer set in the futuristic Mechangeles, where you take control of a robot called o-ramatron, and alongside Bo 3, make your way through enemy-filled sewers, factories and laboratories as you attempt to find and rescue Dr. Zarro. So as we hit the main menu, which we navigate using this crosshair, we can first take a look at the options menu where we have the usual suspects, including audio, control dead zones and rumble, as well as some toggles for things such as tutorials, text sound and the aiming reticle. Taking a look at the game's controls, we can see there's quite a lot of them, so I'll talk about them as I come to them. Finally, before starting a game, we can check out Robozarro's credits, where we can see the game was developed by a very small team, with Matt Stranad receiving several of the game's credits. So as we begin a new game, we get an intro showing a lady called Grams making contact with Fix, who's a robot from the local scrap shop called Fix and Chips, and it appears that some sort of plan is underway. She then activates o-ramatron and we gain control of him, and then we're guided by Bo 3 out into the street, at the end of which lies the aforementioned shop and our first objective, to collect some supplies. On our way we can press X, our action button, to talk to some locals, none of which have much to say, and loot some scrap from bins. We can also get a quick feel for the game's controls. Our left thumbstick moves o-ramatron, right is used for aiming, and we can jump by pressing B and double jump by pressing B a second time whilst in the air. We also have a couple of utilities available to us, including a flashlight to light dark places which can be activated by pressing up on the D-pad, and down on the D-pad activates our robo scanner, which highlights doors, enemies and other objects. So continuing on to the shop, we grab our supplies before heading back out into the street to find Chief, a robot with a serious chip on his shoulder. Get it? Chip on his shoulder? Forget it. Anyway, we managed to con him into thinking that we're a sewer repair team, and he opens the sewer doors for us, and so begins the game proper. This underground area is where Dr. Zarro has hidden some of his gadgets and inventions, the first of which is a modified light gun which acts as our first weapon. We can use our standard fire to blast enemies and open containers by pressing R, and we can also perform a charge shot by holding ZR, which is able to destroy some doors. This however costs a significant amount of energy seen in the bottom right next to our health, and energy regenerates slowly over time, and each of the various weapons and gadgets we pick up throughout the game cost different amounts of energy. So as we make our way through the sewer level, which like all other levels in the game is broken down into 10 relatively small stages, each stage has a set route through it and often involves us opening doors with batteries or switches. Plenty of platforming, and we encounter various hostile robots which we blast to pieces. We also find various pickups scattered about the stages. There are spanners which replenish some of our health, lightning bolts which allow us to instantly fire a charged shot, grenades which we can toss at enemies using our A button, and rapid fire ammo for the light gun, which doubles our fire rate with it when we've got some available. Our current supply of these can be seen in the bottom left, next to our supply of materials, which are also found scattered about levels, and we can use these at Fix and Chips terminals to buy additional power-ups. So towards the end of the sewers we gain our first gadget, the Robo Claw, which when equipped can be activated by pressing the Y button. This fires a grappling hook upwards which attaches to the ceiling, and we can then swing around on the line, which we can also extend or retract by pressing up and down on the left thumbstick. Not long after this we also get our second weapon, known as the Grab and Blast, which essentially functions the same as the gravity gun from Half-Life. We can fire it at an object or some enemies to pick them up, and then press fire again to launch the carried item into other enemies. We're able to switch between our equipped weapon and gadgets by pressing ZL to open our item wheel and then selecting them using the A button, though we can only have one weapon and gadget equipped at a time, and the left and right D-pad buttons also cycle through your weapons. Now after completing the 10th stage of the sewers, we then face off against the level's boss, a hulking caged creature known as Chunks, who proceeds to try and eat us. Utilising our newfound weapons and gadgets, we grapple around the room as he throws a bit of a wobbly, and we blast him with everything we've got whilst avoiding acid that he splashes up us and the spike ceiling above him. Upon his defeat, the acid then drains from the room, and we get to proceed onward with the story and into the game's second level. So I've covered the basics of the game, and I'll now talk a little bit about my gameplay experience with Robozarro. To begin with, I like the game's visuals. The artwork reminded me a lot of those grungy looking Flash games of the early 2000s, and each level's appearance was distinctly different and contained plenty of details in both their environments and enemies. When it comes to the game's enemies, there was some good variation, with each level containing a collection of enemies that fit nicely with its theme. For the most part, enemies provided a decent challenge, but several of the enemies were significantly more difficult to defeat, often requiring you to switch between weapons and gadgets, which in itself became a bit tedious and made almost every encounter with these enemies more of a chore than a fun challenge. The levels themselves contain 10 stages, which do begin to feel overly long and a bit repetitive, as you face similar challenges in each stage. I think that this could have been avoided by increasing each level's size slightly and reducing the number of stages. Now, the platforming and physics-based gameplay is solid for the most part, but the game's main problem lies in its controls. I've already mentioned the requirement to switch between weapons and gadgets, which is frequently required in both combat as well as when working through each stage's environmental puzzles, but the main issue occurs with character movement, especially when fighting bosses and enemies. Movement itself feels slippery, sort of like you're running on ice, and the grappling hook, which you use an awful lot throughout the game, feels a little clunky and awkward. Jumping in the game also feels incredibly heavy, with our character gaining very little air even with a double jump, and this is sometimes a problem even when facing smaller jumps. This one part where you have to jump up a set of conveyor belt platforms nearly made me rage quit as I fought against the game's controls, and it must have took me about 40 attempts before I was finally able to make it past them. This is a fucking joke, this part. Now, the game contains 5 bosses, which I've already said are a bit of a pain due to the controls, but the boss mechanics themselves also feel a little weak, with some of them able to basically one-shot you, and others able to be completely cheesed without you taking a hit. On the whole though, I thought Robozarro was an alright platformer. It had some good visuals and interesting and varied gameplay mechanics, but it was let down a little by poor controls, and an excessive amount of clunky equipment switching. So now we come to rating the game. Now, I rate games between 1 and 5 stars, with a sure stamp of approval reserved for the worst games on the eShop. This rating is based on my own personal opinion on what a game has to offer in terms of gameplay and value for money to potential buyers. And for a rating, I'd give Robozarro 2 out of 5 stars. Content wise, there's a decent amount on offer here for the price, and you'll get a good few hours gameplay out of Robozarro, though it does feel a bit repetitive at times, and the controls will no doubt be the most frustrating aspect of the game for players. You can get the game from the UK Switch eShop currently with 20% off for £5.3p, or from the US eShop for $5.59. Alternatively, the game's also available on Steam, Xbox One and PlayStation 4. And that's it for this review of Robozarro. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments section below. As always, hit that like button if this review helped you out, subscribe for more Switch indie game reviews, and jump onto the Starseekers Discord for chats and fun times with a growing community of indie game lovers. For now though, I just want to say thanks once again for watching, and until next time, game on.